if you then look at the change we needed to make as a leadership team and as a total organization, is focusing on not doing stuff the old way, but the new way. And it's very, very difficult. The materials and the initiatives that you deploy, they either work or they don't, right? So either there's a strong translation of strategy into execution or not. And this has always been the case. Today, however, the market is very challenging. And so today, to win, we need to be even more focused. One of the things I find very strong in the way of working is that the squads actually own their own squad role. So of course they get the target. We all get our targets. But in the end, to translate it drives a lot of ownership, and I think this has been critical in the process. To have a lot of in action exposure to the leadership team, which is great, and that helps for people to step up. Also helps for the leadership team to see the talent in the organization and how they collaborate cross-functionally, which arguably, in my point of view, is one of the biggest challenges that we have today, right? Things get lost in translation. They simply do. And that's a good way to drive the mentality of not hiding issues under the carpet, but being very upfront about it. If we were looking back at our first quarter, and we thought back then we were doing quite well, when we built the wall, this is pretty good. In reality, we have learned to be much clearer, to simplify, to be much more intentional. And what also underlines this transformation is every quarter you get better. This is not like, okay, yes, you turn a key, but it's not like you do it perfect from day one. You need to also, as a leadership team, be keen to learn. Every quarter you improve. With every Gemba you improve.
Welcome to Impact Leaders, a forum where Axio Global gives voice to the leaders that are shaping the work across the world. So welcome, Stijn. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you very much.
You have an incredible career, from field sales supervisor to channel account manager, from national accounts management to developing the capabilities in Benelux for the sales team, and then later performing in very complex markets like Buka, Russia, and now leading the operations here in Netherlands. So it's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
We've been working in the last year with you, shaping an incredible way of working. My colleague Andreas Jolle, who is the partner at Ofenau Capital Partners and who was the CEO of Harman Group by the time I was working, I was a director in the firm. He describes the simple key to success, and he described it like brutal focus on what matters the most, shaping or building an organization of A players, creating a mindset of winning over activity, and finally shaping a disciplined rhythm of leadership that we call the drumbeat. And you have turned this key during the last year, and we want to learn from you because we have seen you leading this way of working in an incredible way, and we want to learn what has been your learnings, turning this key that Andreas described and leading in the way I just described.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously I will get to the most recent developments, but first, if I take a step back, I think for me, turning the key, it's connected to what you say, but two things for me in particular. So one is, of course, there's always a personal drive, of wanting to win in the marketplace, with the consumer, with the customers. But the other one is probably even more important, and that's being clear on winning as one, and moving as one. And for me, that already started when I was in the field. You're in the stores, right? So you're very close to how you actually win or you don't win. And you also realize that the materials and the initiatives that you deploy, they either work or they don't, right? So either there's a strong translation of strategy into execution or not. And this has always been the case. Today, however, the market is very challenging. And so today, to win, we need to be even more focused on making one effort to win in the marketplace with our consumers and with our customers. And that's why I turned the key.
Yeah, incredible. So the market is really fragmented right now, right? So there is a lot of fragmentation, and I think, no, what you said, this brutal focus to make sure that the execution happens, no, in the way that consumers reward it. I think it's very important, right?
Yeah.
What are the key changes, no, that were more important in your opinion in this, in this
Yeah.
journey in the last year?
Yeah, so I think that of course there's a couple, right? But if I look at what are the big changes, I think the big change for us is as a total organization. So everybody, we needed to make a real mind shift change, right? So we need to get into the next phase of growth, which is different versus the past. So the past was more around we grow value, and we had many ways to make that work for consumers, for customers, and for us. Today is different, and we need to move into new spaces, and we need to grow not only value but also volume. And so it's a different mindset, it's a different growth. And if you then look at the change we needed to make as a leadership team and as a total organization, is focusing on not doing stuff the old way, but the new way. And it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult. And what has helped and what also underlines this transformation is every quarter you get better. This is not like, okay, yes, you turn a key, but it's not like you do it perfect from day one. You need to also, as a leadership team, be keen to learn. Every quarter you improve. With every Gemba you improve, right? So we need to work on how do we really simplify. Just an example to underline this is, if we were looking back at our first quarter, and we thought back then we were doing quite well, no? When we built the wall, and this is pretty good. In reality, we have learned to be much clearer, to simplify, to be much more intentional on what are the input and what are the output KPIs to really help the squads to build strong squad walls. Yeah. So it's I would say it's an iterative process, and the key change, let's say, to your question, it's both being really clear on this is a transformation. And this is taking a new way of working. So we need to commit to it. We need to learn as we go. And we need to drive a lot of clarity to make it happen. So
I think what you are describing, there are so many learnings, no? Because first of all, no, I mean, me, myself, you, so we have always seen, no, we have a strategy, and then we spend a lot of time, no, creating that strategy. Strategy needs to be, well defined. Then we communicate it to the organization, and we think that's, the strategy that is perfect. It will be executed as we think, no? And what you are describing, yes, when we translated this strategy, the first quarter into what we call the wall, for the audience, that unique source of truth, where we have the brutally important priorities for the organization. It has nothing to do what we define in the first quarter on how we, how you iterated every quarter and how you learned every quarter to make that wall of priorities, of brutal focus better, And I think there's a key change of mindset, It's not trying to get perfection, in the first quarter, but getting into the execution, into the field, on the floor, learning on the floor from the execution, from also the feedback from consumers, and being capable to adapt, very fast, right? I think this is a fundamental change of mindset, From trying to make it perfect to evolving continuously, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think in that it's both the management team and also the squads, right? So being really clear on their mission. One of the things I find very strong in the way of working is that the squads actually own their own squad wall, So of course they get the target. We all get our targets, But in the end, to translate it drives a lot of ownership, and I think this has been critical in the process as we moved into it.
I love what you are describing, because in the last years also there has been, and we at Actual Global don't like the, these theories that look sometimes, very good in the paper, but they don't happen, So we always say that the teams are not self-directed, The direction is defined by the consumer, The direction is defined by what is the value, that the consumer is asking us and what we need to deliver. But the teams, the squads you are defining, they are self-organized, right? They own, the outcome to deliver to the customer, and then they own their squad wall, where they define the execution plan, the tactics, even the learning, and how it changes every week. And I think this is a very beautiful also learning from what you are describing. Let's talk also about, we are discussing about prioritizing and brutal focus. But I think it's also very important to be super clear with the organization on the things that we are not going to pursue, right? With the things that we don't want to spend time on. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, so this is I think a difficult one.
It's a very difficult.
Sounds easy, but it's difficult, and it's also a cultural challenge to an extent, because the good thing is we have a lot of bias for action, which is great, but there's a potential flip side to that it may drive too many priorities and starting too many things. So what we've taken a very conscious effort on is this principle of keep, improve, start and stop. And obviously the last one is the most difficult one, and to be clear on that, so what we've tried to do is take a couple of simple and intentional measures. So for example, if we know that we need to spend more time with the consumer, with the customer, and we need to reduce meeting time, it's a simple principle. We said we cut it in half, so 50% reduction. Doesn't mean it happens always everywhere, but it also helps us to be more agile and to work with each other in a way that is focused on what we actually need to do. So we've done that also as a leadership team, taking a conscious effort to make that cut. And I think that helps. Similarly for projects, right? Rather than trying to do as many as we did, we take a simple measure and we say, okay, so can we cut this significantly? But then we need to put bold aspirations, right? As with everything, because otherwise, it doesn't really happen. But this principle of keep, improve, start, stop, I think is very powerful.
It's very powerful. And it's every quarter, as we described. So
exactly.
It's not something that you do once per year and you forget. It's something you need to do every quarter, because it's incredible, how in 3 months, the agendas gets, full of things that maybe are not the most important thing, right? It's incredible and it's surprising. You were describing before, the importance of every quarter having the right ambition and learning and then starting over again. I always say that for me, every quarter we need to throw away the trophies, also the failures, learn from the failures. So it's very beautiful to talk about failures, but when we fail, we are all very sad and the energies go down. But it's very, very important every quarter with the keep, improve, start, stop that you define, to have the capability as a management team to reset and to start again, and also with the teams, right? What's your experience with this? Can you in terms of energy of what happens in the organization? Because it's beautiful, in the theory, but then it's not so easy to make it happen, right?
Correct. And I think one of the things is we can spend a lot of time looking back. And to an extent, that's fine, right? We need to take learnings, and that's absolutely fine. But it's about the balance. At some point, we need to conclude. And then what I like about the quarter by quarter approach is, and that helps everybody to look at the next quarter in light of your full year plan. So it's, even if you've missed in elements, it's about what can I do next quarter to get back on track with my annual plan. And that is a very simple and very intentional way of looking forward without losing sight of the big picture, because we may need to recover something from the last quarter in the next one. So, and I think that's a healthy conversation also to have with the squad teams, and it drives forward action rather than backward looking.
You're touching two incredible things for me. That one is the change from reporters to pilots. So it means the pilots, when they have a delay or they had a problem, yes, they explain what happened, but they are fully focused on landing on the destination and landing everyone safe and landing everyone as soon as possible, right? And I think what you are describing is this change from reporters to pilots, first as a management team, but also I know very well how you have been transforming the mindset of teams from reporters to pilots. How the teams are, evolving also from reporters to pilots. What's your experience with this?
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, is the fact that the teams, they own their own squad role. So the mission is clear, right? You want to win in a channel, you want to win with a certain brand. Or
Stijn, for the audience, the squad what is their one execution plan where they define their bets, their initiatives, and their glide path.
Exactly.
That's very important.
Exactly. So we
because you already talk like Axio Global.
So what we do is we give the target, of course, as we need to drive clarity on what is the goal. But then it's up to the teams, up to the squads, how to make that happen, and that's where they create their own focused way of the key results, and this drives ownership. So this then means that it's not there's no way to hide in a way to say it, right? So they are owning the way how to get to the targets, and this is what they report back on, and that I think is a very helpful way to show it's not about we all try. No, we need to focus, and we have cut our total plan for the year, which we like to call AOP. We've cut it into bespoke targets for bespoke teams. And that's a simple way how you drive ownership and how you're clear on, guys, cross-functionally, this is what we own.
Very interesting.
And that's how the teams work. So the methodology in a way helps us to drive ownership in the organization.
So one priority, one team, one squad goal, that means one execution plan. No? So very simple, right? We talk about the importance of simplicity, and this is very simple, right? In the end, it's one priority, one team, one squad goal that is an execution plan that is owned by the team, that is a cross-functional team, and they own the outcome, right? They own the outcome and they own the execution plan to deliver, right?
Yeah, and the point you make about cross-functional, I think, is really important because that's where it's never the case that one department does great and the other. It's not the case. We either all win or we don't. So really to drive the focus on consumer, customer as a cross-functional team, I think is very powerful.
Winning is what matters at the end, no?
Absolutely.
Against the customers, and the customer is both. The customer is who defines, right? If we win or not. You touch another important thing, and there is sometimes a bit of confusion about, but setting a quarterly rhythm with also a weekly check-in with the teams. By the way, you do check-ins with the teams in 10 minutes, not in 1 hour, in 10 minutes, no PowerPoint karaokes, right? But some people might think this is a bit short-term, no? Every week, but what happens during the week? What do you have to say about this? Is this short-term, or the rhythm has nothing to do with, you are looking for the future, but you are building every week, the capabilities and the muscle to deliver on the long term? What's your opinion? Or what's your experience? Because you have been leading this.
No, I think it starts with the quarterly rhythm that we just talked about. And that's really important to look, okay, so how can we impact in the next quarter? Then I think what the weekly rhythm does is it helps us to identify problems early on, which is fine because stuff always happens. The thing we don't want is at the end of the quarter to find out that we've missed the boat on something, that we hadn't taken an opportunity that we could have or addressed an issue early on, right, to still make impact. And I think the weekly rhythm is a good opportunity to your point, for the teams not to report, but to actually tell how are they progressing, how is their confidence level, are they running into obstacles that they need help with, and that's a good way to drive the mentality of not hiding issues under the carpet, but being very upfront about it. And it's also something where, as leaders, we need to acknowledge that. So we need to acknowledge that it's good to signal problems early on, because then we can either ask the teams how they can solve it, or if they need any help, we can offer the help. But we need to flush those out early, and I think that's especially for me what the weekly process does.
But what you are describing is a big management or leadership change, right? There's leaders giving a super clear direction. So the strategic PowerPoint is not enough. So you are translated this strategy into a clear set of priorities that you put in the wall. So a lot of clarity, no? First of all. Second, you empower teams to translate each of these priorities into a clear execution, and then you serve the teams somehow. No, you are checking in with the teams, not to push them, but to really understand what is their confidence level, and that they surface obstacles and problems. And we know sometimes we leaders don't like to know much about the problems. No, it's better not to know them. But this is a fundamental change, as what you are describing.
Correct, and it's also the commitment as leaders to the teams. If we want them to own the mission, their part of the total plan, then we also need to give the support, and we need also to keep to the weekly cadence and unlock. And it's a commitment in terms of time, but especially in terms of responsiveness. So as leaders, we make the commitment to be responsive. If an obstacle is flagged, we go and address it. The outcome can be everything, right? But the key point is that we need to be responsive and we need to address the issue.
Amazing. So this comes to, I learned from Nitin Paranchove, when I was working with them in Unilever, also Fernando Fernandez, the current CEO of Unilever, the never a victim mindset. No? That for us, it's a very important principle. No, basically for what you are describing. No, everything is changing. The world is so turbulent right now. No, things change. Sometimes it's not our fault, but we have difficulties, and it's very important this mindset of moving from victimhood to ownership, right? And you use the weekly rhythm for this. Is the weekly rhythm the rhythm that helps you, to stop the victimhood sometimes that we have, and then help teams to move forward?
Yeah, I think so. Also because what it does is it gives the opportunity to be vocal about what's happening, right? And that also prevents issues from not surfacing. So I think the weekly rhythm is really important. I think the other thing is we take moments to reflect. So also in the quarterly iterations, what we do is we take time to reflect on what went well, what didn't, and that's also an opportunity to realize and maybe for us as leaders to point out some simple truth. Like, for example, the external world is the same for everybody. It's a level playing field. The only thing is not an easy field. So we need to make sure that we gain competitive advantage to win in that circumstances. But the circumstances are there for everybody. Yeah. So I think these reflection moments, both in the weekly cadence, but also the quarterly iterations, really help us to ground ourselves. Right? Because it's always easier to blame an external factor. The reality is you shouldn't. We all know. But to take this time weekly and to really reflect on what went well, what didn't, helps to focus on, okay, so what are we going to do?
It's incredible because I think you are, in the way you explain it, is so simple, no? Because some people might think, well, quarterly rhythm, again, no, every quarter we are short term just looking for the, no, you are describing the quarterly rhythm as a rhythm to always look forward, to cut the crap, to eliminate the victimhood, to have the right conversations at the management team, to look forward and to move forward with the organization as one team, So because the realities are the same for everyone, and then we need to be brutal focused. So thank you for, the clarity in which you described this rhythm. I want to talk about talent now. Talent leadership. One of the things we like to talk about is about distributed leadership. One of the reasons why we create ways of working across the world and here in PepsiCo is because we need more leaders, right? We need more leaders, and the leaders are in the organization. You have a lot of talent density. Through this new way of working, have you discovered talent that maybe was a bit more hidden in the organization?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. First, I think it's a great opportunity for people to step up, because you're in a cross-functional team. And by the way, it's not only for the squad leader; it's for everybody, because everybody takes a holiday. Everybody can own part of the mission, right? So it's a real opportunity for people to step up and to have a lot of in action exposure to the leadership team, which is great, and that helps for people to step up. Also helps for the leadership team to see the talent in the organization and how they collaborate cross-functionally, which arguably, in my point of view, is one of the biggest challenges that we have today, right? To collaborate better cross-functionally. So to see the teams in action in that setting is great. The other thing we try and do is we try to look at the results and have different measures to be clear on talent density and take it away from subjective more into a well-funded view with proper insights, some from the wall, some that we have as PepsiCo in terms of tools and tracking that we do, to really have a clear view and to have a clear map of where sits the biggest talent, where do we have gaps, and how do we drive it, also in light of our portfolio and channel expansion. So how do we make sure that in the areas we need it most, we put our strongest talent, and we're also honest about what do we have in-house and what don't we have. So it's a way for the teams to shine, and it also really helps us look at how strong is our talent density and where do we need to make interventions.
Wow, what you are describing is huge, because again, this is what you are describing is a fair talent density system where you through the giving the teams the opportunity to work on the most important priorities of the organization. You give them the opportunity to shine, to demonstrate, and this also gives you the real view of what is the talent that you have for the next challenges, for the future challenges in the organization, where you cannot miss to make the customers happy, right? This is a very interesting, and how you are combining, no, the information in the wall with the brutally important priorities, with also, no, all the analytics that you have in PepsiCo. That's very interesting, and thanks for sharing this. Let's talk about transparency, no? Because when we, shape these ways of working, some people is a bit concerned or worried about transparency. But what happens now? All these priorities are going to be open, for the organization, the execution plans. What's your view on this?
Yeah, so we made a conscious choice to open the wall for the total Dutch organization.
Wow.
And that's a conscious choice. You can either do it but in reality, why not? Is a simple principle of, is this safe to try? Yeah, of course it is, because we all work on the same goals. Yeah? So I think that is really important, and it also gives an opportunity for people to connect to what we are doing and how we are progressing on that agenda, which I think is really important, because oftentimes, and this is what happens, and we were talking earlier about connecting strategy to execution, things get lost in translation. They simply do. So the clearer we are and the easier it is for people to find what are we working on, what are the priorities and why, the better it is. So I think it's for me, it's a very natural choice, yet the methodology helps to make that and to make that very profoundly. Yeah. And it also takes away, we have other tools, right? We also do bi-weekly news beats where we have informal conversations with the whole organization. Also there we explain about the methodology, amongst many other things. So people get proper visibility of what we're doing, more importantly, why we're doing it, and then it's transparent to find it, which I think is in everybody's interest.
I have to say thank you for being, so brave, because again, this thing that you are describing about transparency is very clear, but you need to be brave to say, hey, this is open to the Dutch organization. They can see the priorities, so that no one gets lost in translation, because in the wall, the priorities are so clear, and also in the squad walls and in the execution. But again, thanks for being brave and embracing transparency, as a key driver. I have two last questions, Stijn.
Sure.
First is, what will you say, to the Stijn? I remember we met, 1 year ago, it was the first time we met. What will you say to that Stijn when the first time you met Action Global and you said, yes, I want to shape, the way of working for my organization? What will you say that Stijn?
Yeah, well, I think my experience has been that, when you embark on a journey, transformation is always tough, right? There's always a messy middle where you need to let go of some old habits and then really embrace the new. So I think at that time, I didn't underestimate so much the intentionality we need, but I think that is one of the things that I would really recommend, and even making sure that with the whole leadership team, you really consciously take on board and also be very, very clear in no other transformations at the same time. So you don't go and implement other methodologies or whatever, right? So
this is the backbone, right?
Yeah. So it needs to be really clear, and also the piece of advice that I would give, which we in the end we did, but we could have maybe done from an earlier stage, is really embedded into the process. We have our IPP, our internal process of how we run the weekly to the monthly to the quarterly cycle, and this is embedded, so fast is embedded into that. And I think that really helps to drive one clear transformation, and just makes it come to life quicker.
Yeah. That the way of working is not a mushroom, but it's, let's say, the backbone of all your prioritization and execution discussions, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Thank you very much. And the last one, when I was 18 years old, I was at that time, trying to read about, leaders like you and trying to discover, how they build their careers and everything. And now, I have I'm lucky, to be with one of them, with you. And I want, that you give, to those guys, and girls that are now in the university, right, and are studying, what is the advice you will give them, that will have helped you in your career, so that one day, they can be here, leading a whole organization like you are doing in a very complex environment, in a very complex business. What is the advice would you give to these students?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. It's a really nice question to reflect on. And I think, so one of the things that, let me start with what I would keep in light of our methodology. So what I would definitely keep is it's a great investment to start where actually sales, if you want a commercial role to start in field, I think is excellent. It's time invested. This is something that you take with you throughout your career. So that has been very, very valuable.
To be on the floor, right?
To be, yeah, exactly, where it actually happens and where our brands come to life in front of the of the consumers, if you like. So that has been very, very valuable. I think the other thing where I would encourage and advise to really prioritize is to make broadening steps. Yeah? We learn a lot if we step out of our comfort zone. Of course, there needs to be a balance between a steep learning curve and being able to deliver results, right? That's but to stretch this, and especially early on in your career, make moves to different functions, to different disciplines, I think is very valuable. And from that also, where I learned a lot is to move to other countries where you take a lot of the learnings from a very developed, also in terms of our relationship, for example, with our biggest customers, a very developed market with a good presence in terms of how we operate and our brands within the categories, to countries where we're still building and we have maybe a very small footprint, but yet there's a lot of opportunity. So that's also really an accelerator that I would advise people to do, to take those sort of learning opportunities as early as they can, because it really helps you to look at, the full spectrum and to take, there's a lot of learnings that can be had from, a developing country also back to a developed country, right? In terms of entrepreneurial drive and how you build a category from nothing, right? So there's super learnings to be had, and I would encourage everybody to develop, and to broaden, to be curious for learning. I think it's one of the critical underlying things that I would advise people to always be curious.
And probably that will be more important than ever in the next years, right?
Yeah, things are definitely changing faster, so all the more need to be curious and to learn.
I think robots will behave like humans, and we humans need to make a big step forward. Stijn, it's been an absolute pleasure, an honor, not only to do this interview, but also to have partnered with you, with your leadership team and your organization in the last year to shape fast way of working, the way of working in PepsiCo. Thank you for being the leader that you have been. It's the kind of leadership I describe a little bit in the book. It's the kind of leadership, right, that you have demonstrated through your behaviors on the floor. Yes, I think your career, where you started on the floor making things happen, is what has made the difference. You took the way of working and you make it happen. Thank you very much. As I said, it's an absolute honor for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks for all the help.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having Stijn here, and I hope you enjoyed Impact Leaders. Thank you very much.
Thanks.